Niner.
What's happening, everybody? It's Anthony. It's time for The Truth Will Set You Free. We've got the main four here. This is episode 197. We're getting real close. Season number 3, getting real close to number 200. We now have an actual new, what I believe is a regular on the show. If you agree with it, let us know in the comments. It doesn't matter if you do or don't because she is.
She's not going back. She's staying.
She's not going back. We tried. We kicked her in the face. We beat her. We punched her. Just kidding. We did not. There was nothing physical. That was a horse that did that, which we've learned not only are horses expensive, they're also dangerous. Like this video, share the video, guys. I'm actually, because I put a post up. I put a post up on my personal page. As you guys seen, I've posted a little bit more political stuff in the last few weeks. I posted on my personal page, and we actually, because we had Carl, if you remember Carl Covington, Carl was supposed to come on the show, but just like, no offense, Carl, every other time something came up, and he said it was work, and you know what? Work always trumps everything.
He is not lying though, bro. He's filming. He's like filming movies, so he is literally busy, and it is on call. So busy. They had a scene. So I give Carl a pass. That's my bro. You know,
did we just send Alec Baldwin to shut down the movie?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you saw Alec Baldwin's brother, Billy, the one that nobody knows who he is, went really hard.
Yeah, he's been going pretty crazy.
Pretty hard against RFK. So we're going to talk a little bit about RFK, but we're going to bring up our guest shortly. We're going to talk RFK, and we're going to talk why Kamala, because we have somebody here. Jay Kennedy is still a maybe. He's going around town with some people in wherever he lives, and he might try to jump on. But we've got a decent amount of people watching already. We're almost at 75. And we haven't even got the Twitter bump yet or the X bump, so keep sharing it. Last thing before we bring Jay, is there any pressing news we want to talk about that's not really part of the discussion? Casey, that was my...
Oh, $240 million accidentally being given to the Taliban?
There's that.
Our government is fantastic. What are we expecting to happen tomorrow?
It sounds like Jack Smith is about to do something. Emily, what kind of news do you have?
I mean, this is a little bit close to my heart, but Pavel Durov being arrested in France, it's horrible, and it seems like the only countries coming to his defense are the UAE and Russia. So...
We have to talk about that. You have that on the list to talk about?
It is. And I don't know if Jay knows about it. If not, that'll be the last thing. If Jay doesn't want to talk about it, great. When we have the opportunity to have a conversation, which 197 episodes in, this is one of a handful where we get to do the initial idea of the show, which is to have a conversation about topics. And Jay, I see in the back, and we're about to bring you, if there's somebody that is, if it's your wife or if it's a friend that wants to be a part of this conversation, you can send them that link, and they are more than welcome to join at any given point whatsoever.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I would love that. I should have said that before you came up. And honestly, I was thinking about not having Emily this week because I didn't want it to be feel like we're teaming up. So the one thing I will stress right now before Cash says hello to everybody is I want respect in the comments. Please respect in the comments. We know that this is more of a one-sided audience. We want it to be fair. We want if you disagree with facts and points. And my mom asked me a very important question this week. She's like, how many people do you really think that you've switched over their mind to voting? And I think Cash has had an effect on a lot of people that might have switched over. I think for me, it's more of, I'm trying to equip people with information so they can have intellectual, intelligent, logic-based conversations, and that's the best that I can do, and that's what I'm doing, and that's honestly what I would like you guys to do in the comments. When I posted on my personal page to look for somebody, I was not overjoyed at the comments that were ripping the idea of there being an intelligent Kamala voter and all these different things, because that's unfair.
That is.
Here's the deal. I don't necessarily disagree that I just don't understand the intelligence behind it, but we're about to find out. But what I do disagree with is if I'm looking for something to have a conversation with somebody, how is that going to attract anybody to be a part of the conversation? So let's think through things. And again, there are some logical points that I'm curious of hearing about, because there is some things Kamala has done and there are some things Trump has done wrong. And that's what we're going to have the conversation about.
Facts.
Cash, go ahead and talk real quick, and I'm going to go ahead and do the impossible and share this to my personal page.
What's up, beautiful people? I'm glad that you're here with us again today. So check it out. This is what I got to ask you guys first. Number one, if you could, wherever you're watching this from, can you please do me the favor of liking this video and sharing this video out? because I didn't tell you guys this yet, but I got screenshots. People were trying to share out the live that I did earlier talking about God, and they were not allowed to share it. It was saying that it was a problem, or you're not allowed to share this content or something like that. It was crazy. And there's people that don't normally share it. So I'm wondering if they're squashing me on the people that don't know. So if you all could test that theory for me and share this thing out right now, I would greatly appreciate it. Secondly, as we bring our guest on, you guys, I'm asking you, please, we attack the issues, not each other. All right. This brother that's about to come up, he is our brother. He is an American, and he loves this country just as much as everybody else does. Right. And in his mind, the person that he's voting for can do the job best. It's our job to have the conversation and hopefully get some information while giving some information and hopefully, educating each other, and maybe he'll see the light. But if not, he still should be treated like a brother, because first off, he was brave enough to come up here and have the conversations with us. So please, everybody, show a little respect in the comment section. Attack the issues, not the man. All right. That's it. Love you guys. With that said, you're muted. I read your lips, bro.
With that said, this is technically more interview time than Kamala has actually done. So that's a big deal. So this is something special. Again, guys, episode 197, season 3. Here is our guest, Jay Bushnell. Jay, what's happening, brother?
Hey, thanks, Anthony. Thanks, Cash.
No problem, my brother.
To this. My name is Jay Bushnell. I hail from the greater Chicagoland area. I am your Carl replacement. And for this episode, your token liberal. So I'm looking forward to a lively debate and discussion. Thanks for the invite. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, sir. I like you already, Jay. You're all right with me, bro. This is good.
Even Bobby's watching, so this should be good.
Oh, Bobby Sauce is here. That's amazing.
In the comments.
I wish Bobby would come on a show with us again.
Yeah, Bobby, that's a challenge, Bobby. Come on another episode. Come on next week. He's got to be on the 200 episode. All right,
he's dope.
Jay, we're not going to start debating. I wanted to learn more about you, what your political history is, and your stance. Let's start there so we know a little bit more about you.
Sure. So, believe it or not, I'm a registered Republican.
Wow.
And I am a Reagan era, Bush era, big time Republican supporter. I did make the switch over to Obama, and I have been voting Democrat ever since. I really liked Obama's positions. I liked his policies. I liked his sanity that he brought back to government, and that kind of leads me into the same reasons why I like Kamala Harris. I don't know if you're aware that Kamala Harris used to work for Obama in his campaign way back in the day. So some of her strategy, tactics, policies are most likely derived from Obama when they worked together.
Okay. So Kamala worked for Obama, and let's also, I want you to know a little bit about us as well. Cash when was the first time you voted was 2020, correct?
It was for Trump. Yeah, that was the first time I ever cast a vote.
I was a lifelong Democrat. I voted twice for Barack Obama. 2012 was the first time I started thinking differently, but I still voted for him because I think Romney was a horrible choice.
Yep.
So yeah, I understand Obama. I understand the campaign around him was fantastic, and it moved people to want hope and change. And we were at a difficult time in our country. And then I made the switch in right around 2013, 2014, with Michael Brown and some of the things I saw, I started realizing that everything we were seeing on TV was a lie. And then when Trump came around, still was to be determined. And then once it was time to vote, that's where I led my allegiance. And then I've continued since then. And Casey will make fun of me. I've been an RFK fan since day one. And if he was a viable Democrat candidate, I would have considered seeing where that would have gone come November. Casey, give a little bit of your background.
Yeah, I will probably be a first-time Trump supporter this year. I'm much more of a libertarian. against both the red and the blue as the solution because they've been in charge for so many years. But a lot of my stances are middle of the aisle. Now, I do make fun of Russo because of RFK, and he was crying when RFK did endorse Trump.
100%.
So we do have to make sure that everybody knows about that.
He
But
cried like literal tears.
yes.
Oh man.
So I was crying at Walmart because I was listening in my ear to the last 3 minutes of RFK's concession or whatever you want to call it, his suspending his campaign when he talked about what was important to him. And that was honestly, I'm at a point where I'm leaning towards black pilled. And when I heard him make those statements, and I reinvigorated my passion for politics and potentially getting involved in the aspect of politics, because his biggest issues are also my biggest issues. I think we're poisoning this country, and I think that we have a limited amount of time in order to actually make a difference, and we're at a very important precipice in this country. And I am somebody that would love to actually throw my hand back in the ring for stuff like this, because I had lost a lot of vim and vigor up until that moment, and it brought me to I wasn't bawling in line at Walmart. And by the way, I was at Walmart not for my own food, but I make my own dog food. So there's that. Okay. Emily, your background, fascinating. Emily, go ahead and explain that to Jay.
Okay, so I'm 26. So I was actually, I could have voted in 2016 and 2020 presidential elections. I did not. Part of the reason I grew up in California, I was still registered to vote in California. I didn't believe in voting in a state that I wasn't currently living in. I tried to get a Texas driver's license, but the DMV, I went several times, didn't have the paperwork. So it wasn't a priority for me. But that being said, myself and a lot of other of my friends have had to leave California because of policies there, bad democratic policies. So that definitely influenced my political beliefs going forward. I voted in the midterm elections in 2022. And I've spent like the last 2 years traveling to 34 countries. That's really invigorated my passion for politics and wanting to do anything I can to make a difference. So I will be voting for the first time in a presidential election this year for Donald Trump. I was also a big RFK supporter. I donated to his campaign. For personal reasons, I had a pretty severe neck injury that was going to require a spinal fusion. I declined the surgery, and I was able to pretty much heal myself and get back to full activity through changing my diet, exercise. So a lot of what RFK says, I mean, I think his speech, I'm paraphrasing here, but we must love our children more than we hate each other. It's something along those lines.
That was my moment. That was my moment.
I was tearing up because it was very emotional. It was a beautiful speech, in my opinion, maybe one of the top 5 speeches in American history. So
I agree.
Yeah.
So that's us in a nutshell, Jay. So with that, I do want let's start with the basic question. So you're funny. So you were previously a Republican when we were actually mostly on the Democrat side, maybe not Emily, but she was younger. So after Obama, so you were a Hillary voter, I assume, correct?
Yes, I begrudgingly voted for Hillary.
So that was the lesser of two evils type situation. Understandable.
That is exactly right.
Okay. And honestly, when I went to go to the voting booth, I remember I went with my mom, and it was when she lived in Dallas, I lived in Dallas, and we were both, when she was a lifelong Democrat, she was more, and she even helped drive people to the booth for Obama's second term. We both agreed. We said either Trump is going to turn this country back around or he's going to tear it apart. And honestly, I think he did both in his first term, because I don't think the media really let him have a true presidency. And then there's Joe Biden that came out. So before we get to Kamala Harris, explain what you think of the Joe Biden presidency, essentially.
Yeah. So first off, I've got to say that independent auditors who evaluate presidents have rated Biden very high and have rated Trump very low. which I just find interesting. So if you Google or look up independent presidential scholars, you will see that they have ranked the presidents thus far and rate Biden-Harris pretty high. I think Biden inherited a really tough economy with right on the tail end of COVID, the need to ramp up production of the COVID vaccine, the need to distribute that quickly out to the masses, to reduce the death rate that was occurring due to COVID, and then also to bring back literally millions of jobs that had been lost over that COVID time period. I think that Biden and Harris did a great job with that. I'd have to argue that during their administration, they implemented the infrastructure bill. That has done a ton of good for road repair, bridge repair, lead pipe removal, improving public transit, starting to roll out access to high-speed internet. All of those are huge pluses. They then went into.
Before we get too into the weeds, let's just discuss a couple things. So I'll take the last thing you said, with the infrastructure bill and the rollout of high-speed internet. Where do you see that?
Well, I'm a salesman, and my Hyundai Sonata has 350,000 miles on it. So I spend a lot of time on the roads, and I see a ton of that work happening all the time. The roads are definitely better wherever I go, and I mostly travel the Midwest, but I just made a trip down to St. Louis and back. 55 was sweet, and they've got bridge repairs going on right now, left and right on that trip. When I head out to Michigan, the only sore spot is Detroit. The rest of the roads in the area are doing really well. Smooth, no potholes. I think that rollout across America, based on my experience driving the Midwest, is just doing a phenomenal job.
Okay, so roadways, one of the big things in there in the infrastructure bill, and again, there's some positives in every bill that's stuffed with a lot of extra. So one of the things you mentioned was that internet for all, essentially, which was a big selling point, especially because that's supposed to target urban voters, black voters, and say that, you know, for the underprivileged, there's going to be internet everywhere. None of that has been done at all. Some of the roads have been in order to get and again, there's been some good stuff done with the infrastructure bill in terms of roadways. However, a lot of that was already slated to be spent from state money instead of the infrastructure bill, which was federal money that would go to the state. So that was already in progress, especially after the bridge collapse in Minnesota. They had already started looking at that, whatever year that, I think that was in the beginning of Trump's presidency, if I'm not mistaken. They had already started looking at pouring dollars into that from state levels. So the federal plan was that way. One of the big things with infrastructure was also the electric car movement, which as of right now, there is 7.5 between 7 and 8.5 billion dollars have been spent on electric charging stations, to which the completed number, and again, there's more being built, but this was 3 years ago. The completed number is 7 completed charging stations in 3 years, which kind of outlines administrative red tape and issues with bureaucracy. So there's some positives. Some roads might be in better shape, and that might fit you a little bit, and that's great. But there is a lot of things with the infrastructure bill that I'm hoping have not been fulfilled.
I am aware of that. I have not seen anything, any movement with high-speed internet nationwide. So that's definitely a gap in what was promised and what has been delivered.
Okay.
Yeah, the correction on the internet, I'll let you jump in, Cash, real quick. On the internet, mostly from the infrastructure bill, was to be able to give a credit for those that couldn't afford internet. That was instantly rolled out. $40 a month was given out to many Americans. That expired, I think, earlier this year. All of the money went dry. They
Okay.
did have part of it spent to expand the infrastructure. That part has not been done.
Thank you for the
I
correction.
just want to throw out there, because I'm going back a little further with what he was talking about when he said about the jobs. And he said that he felt that they did a good job. Now, I have to disagree on that point, because unemployment underneath Trump was at an all-time low pre-COVID. When COVID hit, yes, everything got messed up. Then they said Joe Biden got unemployment down to 3.4% with all the jobs that he had created, but the jobs that was created weren't sustainable for a person to live their everyday life. The jobs that they had before were better, and this has came out. But also, they just came out with the report saying that they inflated how many jobs was actually given out. They inflated the numbers drastically.
Especially, we're talking in the last year, actually, specifically.
Yes.
The
So
818,000 jobs were not accurate at all. That was quoted.
exactly, which means that he never got the unemployment level back to the level that it was at when Trump had it at its lowest point.
Pre-COVID.
Cash. Bill Clinton made a statement with stats for during the DNC. And
Okay.
in his speech, he mentioned that 51 million jobs had been created over the last 6 presidencies, which are split 3 and 3 between Democrats and Republicans. And out of that 51 million, 50 million jobs were created under the 3 Democrat presidents, and 1 million jobs were created under the Republican president. So I hear what you're saying about the possible question between Trump and Biden, but if you go back further and look at the bigger picture, it seems to me that Democrats are leading the way when it comes to job creation.
So let me take that real quick, if you don't mind. So
Yeah,
with the 51 million, first off, that was even CNN went and because CNN had a back. What's that, Cash?
It was blatant lie. But go ahead.
So CNN actually fact checked it. They had a back page that had fact checks. Amazingly enough, going through the DNC, you just had trouble finding it. So they talked about that claim by Clinton, which actually the number was pretty inflated in terms of the actual job creation, and then the fact that so what he took for Trump's job creation is they didn't take his job creation. They took how many jobs he had on day 1 of his presidency and how many were there at the end, not explaining or not taking into account COVID.
The pandemic, yes.
The pandemic, which the jobs are already on the upswing. The amazing thing is we were at a all-time high, not an all-time, but a recent memory high level of unemployment in March of 2020. Stock market crashed as well as the job market. By the end of that year, we were already back base level to where we were a couple of years prior, and jobs were already back on the rise, and we had not fully unlocked the full economy and allowed people to go back to work yet. So whenever the phrase is brought up, and this is why Trump supporters or conservatives get really, really mad at the statement that the job creation under Joe Biden was so fantastic, is because he was literally just bringing back the jobs of pre-COVID that we're just re-releasing into society. And you also mentioned, and I'll let Cash talk about the jobs. You mentioned the rollout of the vaccine, and trust me, I know it was Trump's vaccine. It is what it is. I don't love it in any way, shape, or form.
It sucked.
But there was more deaths during Joe Biden's first year than there was during the heart of COVID. So during the vaccine rollout, which of course they blame the unvaccinated, which scientifically has been proven completely debunked, they actually had more deaths during then. So in terms of, the dark winter and saving America by him being in the presidency and him running COVID in such a great way, we lost education in children, because he was the one that made sure to continue to have schools locked down through 2021 in many ways, especially the first semester. It was his direction towards the states that made that decision, as well as the fact that the numbers did not go down. They did not go down until the COVID ran its course. So that's just where we are at. So again, Cash, go ahead, and then Jay, go ahead and respond to some of those statements.
So again, I want to reiterate this. The jobs that were created, right, when he had all these jobs that he created were not as good as the jobs that people had pre-COVID. This has been proven. People were living better with the jobs that they had before COVID than the jobs that they had to get because they got removed from their jobs because they wouldn't take a jab or whatever the case was, and had to get a different job. And then on top of that, the majority of the jobs that were created were government jobs.
And this was already said, but I just did a quick search on the fact check of this, and I mean, this is a good point, that job creation, you can't really attribute it all to the president. I mean, a lot of it has to do what Congress is in, and from 1995 to 2001, it was a Republican Congress, so they probably deserve a lot of the credit for some of the job growth. I don't think that it could be all attributed to Clinton. In those cases, just because, I mean, this is the PolitiFact fact check saying you can't attribute job creation or to policies or presidents necessarily. There's some, extenuating factors there.
Yeah. And that's why I'm not a fan. I'm not a huge fan of people on our side talking about gas prices either. I think there's an element of failure in terms of closing the pipelines on day one. But if people, one of the things that I've learned in the last several weeks is that currently we are pumping more oil than we ever have, day after day after day. But that's, again, we're trying to catch up to the deficiencies that we created at the beginning of this presidency. And also gas prices right now are not that bad. Stop comparing gas prices to COVID. I know people are like, well, Anthony,
you live in Texas. Move
I know,
to another state.
Gas is great right now where I'm at. I was shocked.
What are gas? I'm paying like $4 a gallon in Utah,
You're
which
crazy.
is
Over here,
of.
it's like $2.80 right now.
Gas is not that bad. Gas is not that bad based on the level of inflation. It's nothing ridiculous. I remember paying similar prices almost 20 years ago when we had a spike. So you know what? When it was at $4 in Texas, we can have a conversation. But as of right now, we have to understand gas prices are going to rise. I do not like using that against the Joe Biden and Kamala Harris campaign. Sorry, Jay.
I still hate you because you're in Texas.
Yeah, that was a whole crap load of information. Jay, go ahead.
No worries, Anthony. I love to talk about gas prices. I guess I'm the old man in the room because when I used to cut lawns when I was a teenager, the price of gas was 28 cents a gallon.
I'll take it. Can we go back to that?
So I absolutely agree with you that anything higher than 28 cents a gallon is a big problem.
I'm with them on that.
I'm only 40. I'll be 42 in a couple weeks. And I actually, when Missouri had cheaper gas, St. Louis had cheaper gas than Texas. I grew up in St. Louis. And it was, the least I ever paid for gas when I was in high school was 69 cents. No kidding.
At the QT.
And I think it was I think it was a Shell. It was right next to the restaurant I worked at. But that's not that long ago. So again, regardless, I don't think gas prices are worth the big argument when there is other very pressing issues like home prices and different things like that.
So, Cash Kelly, let's talk about those high-paying jobs. So another thing that Biden-Harris can claim credit for is the CHIPS and Science Act. And this whole concept of bringing back microchip manufacturing to America, the good old USA.
That's true.
So they implemented that bill in order to create higher paying jobs through the manufacture of microchips. That also protects U.S. IP because there's a high risk and a danger of having offshore Asian manufacturers creating the chips that we put into our critical computer systems.
Yes, sir. You're right. I'm not going to disagree with you there. He did do that. I will give you that.
Where
Them jobs. That's just one instance. When you're talking all of them job numbers that you heard, That's not even a fraction. That doesn't even equate to the numbers that they put forth. So yeah, he did create jobs. I'm not saying Biden didn't create any jobs. I'm just saying that the number that they're saying he did, he definitely did not, is what I'm saying. And yes, that job may pay a higher wage, but the majority of them do not. And that's a fact. You can look it up.
Yeah. So let me connect the dots on both of those things. Like, he did actually create more jobs. The problem is he's doing exactly what our government, and this is me being libertarian, what our government has been doing every year, over a year, getting bigger and bigger and bigger, because we are bringing everybody in the United States and paying them to be employees for the federal government. We are just bloating our government. And if you look at it, in June of 2024, in those numbers that were released for the jobs report, more of those jobs were federal jobs than anything in the private sector. So we are just putting more people in the government, which is eating up our tax dollars. It's not actually benefiting anybody because it is actually just spending more money. When we start looking at the CHIPS Act, the biggest problem we have with the CHIPS Act is it was never an act to actually bring all of the real chip manufacturing to the United States of America, because we don't really have silicon producers here in the United States. They are all in Taiwan. We are not going to be taking anything from Taiwan because they are our ally. We fund a lot of things over there. We are bringing over a lot of very small little chips, not real chips that go in our smartphones or in the computers. They go into your little internet devices. So say you have a smart switch that hooks up to the internet that you control from your phone. We make those little chips. Those do not produce any money. They are not really big job producing or manufacturing processes when it comes to the chips. This is where we could have done better. I was excited hearing it talked about for the CHIPS Act because I would like to bring the semiconductor industry back to the United States. However, I don't see it happening. We have to pay us Americans a lot more money than what we would have to pay anybody in Taiwan. And you have AMD, NVIDIA, Intel, Raspberry Pi is pulling in Snapdragon, and all of these other big chips that are producing for these devices and the computers. We are not even coming close to touching on those chips. We are talking about very minor, small stuff that is not going to make a dent in the industry.
And doesn't have any. And just to be clear, Jay, Casey is he's in IT. He's an IT manager. He works in kind of a high level of that, so he does understand it probably better than I do. Which actually brings me to my next question, Jay. What do you, if you don't mind us asking, what do you do for a living? What sector are you in?
I'm in manufacturing. I sell foam into the medical industry.
Really?
So
medical device industry.
If you've ever unfortunately found yourself in an OR, the
well,
mattress.
I was in the hospital.
There you go. So the mattress you were on from Stryker or from Hill-Rom, which is now Baxter, was probably mine.
Very comfortable. I spent all of Wednesday night on one. It was great. I loved it.
Well, thanks. I appreciate the endorsement.
That's fantastic. I used to work in software for the medical device industry. We made software to keep you FDA regulated and kept you compliant with that whole process.
Nice.
And so it's really fun working in the medical device world.
It is fun for me. Yep.
So the last thing I'll say about the microchips is, and Casey already kind of said it, but ultimately, you mentioned how it's like we don't want our IP in China. We probably don't want our devices being made. I mean, that's dangerous. That's an existential threat. These are China's very dangerous. They're still doing it. We make some in Taiwan, but China is still making the things that actually are in our hands every day. That has not changed. But again, you're right. In the jobs number, we did bring some of those jobs over. And now I have to ask the question before we go, because I want to get to Kamala next. Take away some of the speaking points you've had, which are I completely understand where you're coming from. I hear you saying them. Do you feel from a day-to-day basis that we live in a more economically friendly country right now? Take away COVID, take away 2020 March to just those 6 months to the election. Do you think we live in a better country now than we did during those 3.25 years with Donald Trump?
A better country?
A better economic country? Is it, Casey, is there a better way I can ask that question?
That's where I heard better country, and I'm like, that's kind of vague. That's hard to say.
Okay, do we live in a better are we in a better economic position individually as people now? Do you feel better than you did between 2016 and 2020?
I would agree that inflation has outpaced income, and that has hurt almost every family across the board. I cannot blame one president over the other for incomes not keeping pace with inflation. And so, no, I don't necessarily feel that as a country, as a community, we are better or worse off. We are a little bit incrementally worse off than we were back in 2016 due to inflation.
Okay.
So I got a quick question before you move.
I also think that wages will catch up. And that's been the pattern throughout the 200-year history of America. Inflation comes and eats into our spending power. Wages catch up. Wages overtake. Inflation rears its head once again, and then there's pain. So it's very much a cycle, and I'm not sure that any one president can either bear the responsibility for that pain or take the credit when wages grow at a faster rate.
Fair. Cash.
Okay. So I got a quick question for you, brother. You say you in Chicago. So are you in Chicago, or are you in the suburbs, like somewhere on the
outside?
outskirts?
I'm in the suburbs. Yep.
Okay. So do you ever go into the city?
Sure.
Okay. How do you feel about all the migrants in Chicago right now and how they are given places to stay? They're given EBT cards, they're given phones, they're given rides, even the cooling vans. You know about the cooling vans in Chicago, right? How do you feel knowing that people that live in Chicago, homeless people, many of which used to be vets, can't even get into the cooling vans that are now for migrants? And when you try to get in, they ask you if you're a migrant, and if you're not, they won't let you in the cooling vans. I shared the video of it. How do you feel about all of that?
Yeah, it's always a hard question, isn't it? Because you always want to grant others charity as long as they don't land in your backyard.
Sure.
Facts. That's real.
It's true. Go ahead.
So I dislike it, but I also accept it because to a certain extent, I believe that I need to be charitable and grant a little bit of love thy neighbor philosophy to the less fortunate.
So
I feel that, right? But here's my thing. Like you just said, when they're not landing in your community, but when they land in places like where I live, it's not okay for us. It hurts our community because crime goes up. And I shared this the other day on 84th. My guy was over there at the Home Depot. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
They jumped the security guard. These Venezuelans jumped the security guard, broke his arm, and he shot one of them in the face. And that's just one instance that was caught, that we were there for the police scene. But it's happening all over in my kind of communities in Chicago. So I understand the love thy neighbor, but ain't nobody loving thy neighbor when it comes to the people that live in Chicago. They're only loving the neighbor that's not their neighbor, that's from another country.
Yeah,
And nobody's doing anything about it to help the people. People are suffering underneath them conditions.
Yeah.
And everybody's just okay with it because it's the right. It's, and I'm not saying this to you, Jay, but it's like a virtue signal from the Democratic Party, the people that are in leadership, saying, "Oh yeah, we're a sanctuary city," but they're not bringing them to their part of the city. They're dropping them off in places like where I grew up, places like I used to be in, and it's hurting the community there. They're selling drugs. They're buying up all the weapons. They're committing crimes. And then all you see on the TV is black crime. And they show a black person doing something all the time. Black people are the problem, but they're not talking about these migrants that they've brought over here that are the ones committing crimes.
Which are not just Mexican, but they're also Haitian and they look black. And it's the thing.
They're Honduran, they're Venezuelan, they're Nicaraguan, they're El Salvadorian.
They're from Africa, North Africa.
Yeah, they got Somalians out there. There were Somalians walking on the live stream.
So
I personally met migrants that were coming to the United States when I was in Morocco. They were from, I'm going to draw a blank. It was one of the North African countries, but we talked to them and said, what are you doing in Morocco? Are you Moroccan? No, we're waiting here to go to the United States. What's your reason for going? Quote unquote, we're going to claim asylum because our country is not doing well economically. But right there, that's exploiting the asylum, the entire asylum process. They're coming from North Africa and they're completely exploiting our asylum process, and it's coming at the expense of Americans. I mean, I'm all for charity. I'm all for helping a neighbor in need, but we're ignoring our neighbors in need and just with open arms welcoming unvetted people who are coming and committing crimes. I mean, I'm a woman. I travel alone a lot. I have to carry a gun because in Texas, I am worried not about my fellow Americans. I'm worried about migrants that are coming or they're committing crimes. A Venezuelan child punching people in the subway in New York and stealing their phones. A Venezuelan gang just took over an apartment complex in Colorado. It's all over the country.
But not on mainstream media. Let's be pretty clear. Like it's covered on local media and not mainstream. So Jay, we'll go ahead and answer some of that stuff, and then let's really get into, because we only have 20 or so minutes left. Let's get into Harrison Waltz, and we're kind of on we're on the segue because we're talking about the issues at the border, and she was in charge of the border. So go ahead and answer some of those points, or how you feel about some of the things Cash and Emily just said.
Yeah, boy. Much of my belief agrees that immigration should be checked and controlled. There should be checks and balances at the border. All immigration should be legal and vetted. All immigrants coming into the country should be screened in advance. I do not believe in an open border, and I don't exactly know or understand the Harris-Waltz policy when it comes to immigration. So I'm sorry that I can't speak specifically to their position because I don't know what it is, but I can share my own belief that yes, it's important for a wealthier country to have empathy to those who are fleeing persecution in other countries. But at the same time, we need to have checks and balances at the border. We need to have proper screening. We also can reach a saturation point. Cash mentioned that his neighborhood, his area is feeling the pain of immigration because they have reached the point where there may be too many immigrants relative to the resources available to give them proper care. And that ends up hurting those who live there. And that's not something that I approve of or would want to happen to my fellow Americans. So I think we are in agreement with that position. That and I guess I hope that Harris and Waltz have similar policies or feelings that we just talked about.
Well, just
Sure.
to give you some, and then I'll be done. If that was the case, they would already do it. She was the border czar, and she does not mind them being here. She's openly said that. So, I mean, I feel you, and I appreciate your stance. You know, I appreciate you what you just said. That's real. I wish more people that were voting Democrat would say that. Just that right there. Like, maybe you soften me up. I'm like, all right, you get it. You know, but a lot of
Right.
people don't. A lot of people don't because they don't live it. They're not out there. They don't see it, so it doesn't affect them. And like you said, with the whole charity phrase, as long as it's not in your backyard, you know. But go ahead, Casey.
Yeah, the part that I wanted to circle back on this whole thing is, and I you kind of implied, and I think I know what your answer is going to be, but in this scenario that we have today, we have a mass amount of immigrants coming into our country illegally and being placed throughout cities. Like, I'm very against Abbott and DeSantis shipping them all around. I'm not a big fan of that either. But would you say that it is best for Love Thy Neighbor policy to be putting Americans first before we start taking care of our illegal immigrants?
That's what I said.
I do. I do think that it's fair to first take care of our military heroes and make sure that veterans are properly supported and taken care of. So I think that resources should be allocated to their care. And second, citizens should not be experiencing hardship or pain as a result of too large an influx in immigration. And then third, Chicago, for example, is known as the city of big shoulders. And I think that in that sequence, third is correct. Once you take care of veterans and once your citizens, existing American residents, are properly resourced, then it's certainly open to share additional wealth or luck or prosperity with those less fortunate.
No, I agree, but we're very far away from that at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, we have such a housing crisis on the lower, the poverty level Americans, let alone the veterans and our own people, especially those that have served our country. So
your policy, what you just said is straight. That is Trump speaking right there. What you just said.
That's literally that is Trump's actual platform and policy. And the thing that you said was you don't know Harris's, and either do we, because she hasn't said it. So all that we can assume is what she has done as and I won't say the borders are, because that's a trigger word, even though she's the borders are, but she was in charge of the border. She was tasked with the border and did nothing. I also believe that immigration is broken. I think the way that we have our system set up is broken. There needs to be an easier path to citizenship for those that need it, but unfortunately we don't have the ability. We haven't spent the correct money on those immigration bills. And honestly, what Biden and Harris worked on was a Republican bill from a year before that had been squashed by the Democrats, and then added some extra money towards Ukraine and added some more regulations on what happens at the border that would have made it a poor bill. So even though they say it was the Republicans that squashed it and Trump that squashed it, the actual science behind the bill was set up by Republicans a year prior. That actually was a pretty decent bill for border security, and that was squashed by the Democrats. But again, the media will never cover that, because as of right now, the media is over 90% favorable, mainstream and legacy, over 90% favorable to Kamala and Walz, and 86, I think is the number, percent negative towards Donald Trump. So it's not a fair fight from a messaging standpoint, which is a lot what RFK has been talking about since he decided to join Trump, as he said that this is across the board. And I'll say one thing, because I wanted to make sure I mentioned this during this show, because it's timely. So RFK had his big point about the government censorship, the Democrat establishment being in charge of the media, why he decided to start campaigning for Trump, why it's important to him, and then obviously the health piece for America's children and all of the issues, and the fact that the food lobbies, the FDA, the pharma lobbies essentially own all of our messaging in this country, and they own the airwaves. And Marianne Williamson, interestingly enough, outlined something at the end of her speech that she had on Twitter, X. And I found it interesting because I actually really like Marianne Williamson, even though she's a pretty far left Democrat. She went through this whole thing about how RFK was right about all the issues with the Democrat Party and Kamala. And then at the end, and essentially what you're outlining, when you say there's no freedom of speech, when there's no First Amendment anymore, when then none of these things, you're outlining not a threat to democracy. You're outlining an actual destructive entity going against the Constitution and democracy, constitutional republic, but against the beliefs of democracy. It's not a threat. It's an active destruction being done by the Democrat Party right now, which is what was highlighted, including by Marianne Williamson. Then at the end, she goes, "But I'm terrified because I don't agree with him because I believe as though Trump is a threat to democracy." I would choose somebody that somebody would consider a threat, which I disagree with. I would choose a threat over somebody actually destroying democracy as we see it. Kamala Harris was nominated without ever being nominated. That completely circumvents democracy. So now the question for you, Jay, is why Kamala Harris?
Well, I think that the reigning Democrats selected Kamala Harris in part not only because of her experience and the fact that she's VP, but the Biden-Harris war chest is owned by both parties, and those funds can easily be moved to a Harris-Walz ticket because Harris was part of the original fundraising.
Right. $90 million would only be unlocked if it was with Harris.
So I think one of the reasons was financial. But I certainly think that another reason is her experience, her track record, her knowledge of having met most foreign dignitaries through the course of her 4 years as VP.
I'd like to ask one question, just that I've asked some Democrats I've had conversations with. I haven't been able to get a good answer. I hope maybe you could help me out with this question. I would just like to know what has changed for you personally in the last 3.5 years, with Kamala as VP, that you believe now makes her qualified to be president, considering she got statistically less than 1% of the vote in the Democratic primaries when she ran for president in 2019. What are some specific successes that she's had over the last 3.5 years that, as a Democrat voter, have changed your mind and make you believe that she's now qualified to be president?
Well, she was part of all of the bills that we just discussed: the infrastructure bill, the CHIPS and Science Act, the strengthening of the Affordable Care Act. So she was on the team that I think achieved a pretty historic productivity record over those 3.5 years. But on the flip, for me, there are also a lot of Trump warning flags that seem to be ignored on the GOP side that I find fascinating. So I can't help but mention the 34 felony counts where Trump was indicted by a federal grand jury. He's in the Georgia election interference case, and that's pretty clean cut because he's on tape saying, "Find me 11,780 votes." That's
Let me correct. I don't want you to dig a hole too far, Jay. So the
He's
case in
digging
Georgia,
bad. He's digging bad, man.
the case in Georgia is done. Fannie Willis has been thrown out. Is no longer. It's done. The Georgia case is over. So don't even
out of
include
there.
that. So if you want if you want to go into the 34 felonies, I understand how that can be a concern. Do you know? Did you know that those 34 counts were originally misdemeanors? Did you know that?
they still are misdemeanors.
No,
Yeah,
not.
well,
Trumped them. No pun intended. They trumped them up to felony.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, they turned him to felony charges to overcome the statute of limitations so they can charge him with it. If they were not able to change them to a felony, they would not be able to prosecute him today.
Which is
Well,
why
they're-
we say
they're
corrupt DOJ, because
minor,
if you,
relatively minor felonies, and as a first
zero
offender,
felony.
They're
Zero
not felonies.
there were 0 felonies
Zero
at first,
felonies.
my brother. They charged him with straight misdemeanors, but they couldn't go forward with it because of the statute of limitations. So they trumped the charges up so they can get him into court and made them felonies. They weren't going after him for felonies at first. This is why we're all screaming corrupt DOJ,
again,
political persecution.
but
So this is
it's not the DOJ because he was indicted by a jury.
No, that's no. He was convicted by a jury.
Correct.
Convicted.
He was indicted. So the way that that system worked is he was indicted based on 34 counts that were originally past the point of expiration. They had ran their course, but they wanted to make sure and I say they, and by they found a judge. I don't have the name pulled up directly, and I don't have it on the top of my head. The judge. What's that?
Was it Mershon?
Before Mershon. No, it was Bragg. I'm sorry, it was the DA.
Yeah, Alvin Bragg.
Alvin Bragg, who essentially, you can actually see him on tape. Speaking of on tape, when you're talking about finding the 11,000 votes, he was on tape saying, "I will get Trump. That's my mission. Elect me, and I will make sure to get Trump." There is video clips of this. And then what they did was Bragg was the only one that held the power to take these misdemeanors that had expired and turn them into felonies. And this is why we're so upset. So Bragg, a man that said he will do anything in his power to get Trump, takes something unconstitutionally and shifts it because he has the power to do that, but nobody in their right mind would do it to anybody but Donald Trump, because he knows he's going to have the media behind him, and he's also going to have the Democrat Party and the establishment Republicans behind him. So he shifted it from misdemeanors to felonies. And once he shifted it to felonies, you have a district that is as anti-Trump as humanly possible, and the Judge Mershon that did not allow a lot of the evidence to be shown by the defense, which was even more mind-boggling. And then at the end, when they actually did the actual conviction of the jury, which was in a 5% Trump voting district, when they had that, they of course were able to convict of what was originally misdemeanors that had passed the what's it called, the past statute of limitations. So when you use the word 34 felonies, we get triggered because we know that's blatant BS.
Yeah.
And the 34 felonies, misdemeanors, just the number 34, it was what, the number of times that the name was signed?
Yeah.
Or no, it was the number of times that it was classified, that the funds were classified as with the campaign funds. So each time that was mentioned, they counted as one misdemeanor felony. So I mean, really, to me, in my mind, I'm not a law student. It was just one crime.
One major count.
One.
Anyways, go ahead, Jay.
Anthony, I see a theme coming when I start to list, the federal election interference case, the Georgia election interference case, the Florida classified documents case, the New York state civil fraud case.
That was my next point.
The E. Jean Carroll defamation and sexual assault case. So rather than go into details and hear the other side on each and every one, which I
want to be clear, it's not the other side. I'm just countering what you've been told with the actual facts of the case.
Yeah,
and
right.
And I just want, because I know that you probably have not seen the information that people that do more in-depth research do, because on its face, I can understand why somebody's a Kamala voter and a and a Trump hater because
Me too.
the level of information that's been provided to you, no offense, is bullshit. Like it's
Right.
horrible information. And I'm not providing right-wing garbage. I'm actually providing legal statements and the actual laws and the fact, like there's nothing right-leaning by me saying it used to be a misdemeanor. There's nothing right-leaning by me saying Mar-a-Lago is not worth $18 million like it was listed. Like there's so many flaws in all of the cases that I don't mind going back and forth, because I think it's the ability for you to realize that although I'm stopping you point for point, I want to make sure to address what you're saying, because what you're saying has been what you've been fed by a completely corrupt and bogarted media.
Right.
So at a higher level, don't you somehow look at all of these and think where there's smoke, there's fire?
So I agree with
No.
you. Yeah. Yes, I would in a logical scenario. But the part that we're not looking at here is how the media and how social media has manipulated information to mislead people. For example, one of the jurors that was on the jury for the 34 felonies, he did go out and tell his cousin and post it on social media that Trump will be convicted in the middle of the trial. This is before anything was done. And so he did not, and we knew this by Alvin Bragg's district, that Donald Trump was not favored in that area of the country. You can look at it in the 2020 election. He got very small single-digit votes in that area. So they intentionally put it in that district to where he would not get a favorable jury. He was not getting a fair trial at all. And this is coming from, I was not voting for Donald Trump in 2024 until someone shot him in the face.
Emily,
And
go
so
ahead, and then I'll answer my point.
That is where we got to look at the whole picture of what's being thrown at him to make sure that we're doing that. The media is not feeding us the right information. Sorry, Ella.
Who owns Jeffrey Epstein's plane right now?
Not Donald Trump. I can tell you it's owned by a private industry that rents out the plane. And yes, Donald Trump did have that land in Montana when he was there. Did he take that plane? Absolutely not. He took a
This
car.
this is a whole nother thing of what we're saying, Jay. See, right now we're giving you facts. This is not no right-leaning propaganda. We are literally giving you facts that you can, if you took the time, you can go and find out, right? But instantly when we're hitting you with the facts, instead of you just receiving it and be like, oh, okay, I'm going to check that out, you want to go and hit it with the Jeffrey Epstein and just anything to smear Trump because you just don't like Trump, because you've been wired to not like Trump.
And Trump was denied
I'm trying to, I'm just trying to stack because I have this feeling that, again, where there's smoke, there's fire.
Sure.
Why are there so many actions against this individual? And I guess I do not believe in conspiracy theories that say there's a deep state that has organized a mass campaign against one individual. I guess I have a hard time believing that scenario.
Hey, Jay.
Then
Hey,
why
Jay.
was a man?
Hey, Cash.
There is a deep state. Go ahead, Emily. I'm sorry, but there is a deep state. It's proven.
To answer that question, if was this a conspiracy, why was this man in business for 50 years and was never charged with a single crime in any of his business dealings ever? No sexual start charges, nothing until he ran for president in 2016. Why? I mean, he was already in his 70s. Why was he never charged with a crime if this was a problematic individual before he ran for president?
And Jay, you asked the same question that I would ask, where there's smoke, there's fire. So you say, how are all of these things all surrounding Donald Trump? How? I asked the same question, and that's even more of a reason why I start to like him. And to exactly counter your point in terms of the plane that you are mentioning, because again, these are little things that are put out there without any information. Remember when Trump's plane didn't work a couple weeks ago? They used a backup plane that is operated by Threshold Aviation Group, a California-based charter company. The Trump campaign had no idea that before Threshold Aviation bought it, the only way people could trace it is because of the tail number. So they traced it through that, and they're thinking for somebody, if anybody else, if it was a Biden, if it was a Harris, nobody would have done anything. But and this is why I start to go, why are they attacking this man? Why are they attacking the RFKs of the world? Why are they attacking this specific group? Because this guy literally took a backup plane owned by an aviation group based on where the plane had an issue that just so happened to have been owned by Jeffrey Epstein years before, and he was literally renting it from a third party. That you're outlining why this is such a ridiculous election cycle.
And Bill Clinton was on Jeffrey Epstein's flight logs, and he was a keynote speaker at the DNC.
20 times, 30 times? I can't remember.
Over 20.
Bill Clinton was
Bobby
the weirdo.
Sauce's comment. Bobby Sauce's comment, though.
Where was it?
It's up. Go up a little bit.
And this is getting off topic, but if we want to discuss E. Jean Carroll, what about Tara Reid?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing.
I guarantee you Jay doesn't know who Tara Reid is because it was not properly
I
covered.
don't.
What?
No.
Are you kidding me?
Tara Reid accused Biden of rape or sexual assault, was threatened. Her life was threatened, and she had to flee to Russia. She has been very outspoken. She didn't get a court case. She didn't get media attention. This is a woman who has accused Biden of rape or sexual assault. I can't remember exactly what I believe it was rape, and had to flee the country. She's an American. She had to flee the country.
She worked for him. She worked for him, and he was being him. He was being Joe.
90s.
Yeah, and this is exactly what I mean. You know from what plane Trump flew and who owned it, but you don't know the same or worse allegations that have been made about the person that is the president right now.
Right.
That's my whole thing. The hate for Trump overwhelms every. Yeah, it's just like the hate for your for your political rival has consumed you more than paying attention to what your actual candidate that you support is actually been doing. The wrong that he's been doing to the country. And that's where the frustration comes in for me. And I'm a uniter. I love everybody, bro. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. I love you. You're my brother, but at the same time, it gets so frustrating when you're just trying to tell someone like me. I get a lot of flack. I'm a black man. I'm from the hood and I'm voting Trump. So, automatically they're like, and I'm a J6er. And automatically they're like, yo, this dude, you selling out. Da, da, da. I'm like, no, it's not about selling out. I looked into politics. I looked into policies that went forth. And I looked at which economy was better, which America was better, not even just economy, which America was better underneath both leadership. So for me, it's a no-brainer. And then to see Kamala Harris and then doing the research on her and the digging on her that I did back in 2020, figuring her out. I already didn't like her back then. I was against her back then, and see her now just put in the place where everybody says that the Republicans and Trump tried to subvert democracy, but here they are going around and they just throw her in as a candidate that nobody wanted. Nobody in the Democratic Party, 1% of the people that were Democrat wanted her to run for president. 1%. And now she's the nominee for the president of the United States. And nobody's questioning it. Nobody's questioning it. We're looking at our country fall. We're looking at the decay of our country. We're looking at an invasion is really what it is. And what they're really doing is making every American in this country, if you are a low-class American, I'm going to tell you right now, with the thing that they're bringing in all these illegals, they're turning us into it's slavery all over again. And why I say that is because that's what they did in 1661 with the colonial lawmakers, with the anti-miscegenation law, making another class of citizen. That's what they're doing right now. They made the people who they brought in that were indentured servants that were freed. You guys get to be the middle of America. And these people down here, they're the lowest of the low. They're making American citizens the lowest of the low. They're bringing in immigrants and giving them everything. They're giving them $10,000 in food stamps, phones, a ride, a place to sleep, everything that we've been asking for. Like, yo, give us a hand up and you will see us shine. Give us a hand up. Instead, they're bringing them into our communities. They're taking over our communities. People that are foreigners come over here and get tax breaks to start businesses where people like me, we don't get that same tax break to start a business. 7 years of a tax break? Give that to an American. Why don't you give that to the American people that are suffering over here right now, that got the will? We got the smarts, we got the brains, but we don't have the means. And you're giving the means away to people that aren't from here, that are actual criminals. They want to label every black person on TV as a criminal. They got the whole world thinking that black people over here are criminals. But they're bringing actual criminals over here that are committing crimes and giving them everything. Every hand up, everything that to make them successful in life, they're doing that for these people that aren't even from here, and they're going to do it to every American if it keeps up.
Zero cash bail, and they're getting zero cash bail on top of it. And Jay, I find it interesting that when we started talking about Kamala, you did a very good job at this, because this is every time. We were 2 steps into Kamala's policies, which we don't know because she's talking about potentially not even truly releasing them until the election. We got 2 steps in, and you did a masterful job of us turning it to all the things that Trump has done wrong. So it becomes how did we get here in the conversation? And I don't want to keep you too much longer, and I know we want to add a little bit to the end, but with Zuckerberg, I don't know if you've seen Zuckerberg coming out. Zuckerberg talked about the fact that he was forced into manipulation in 2020. He said that he will not back a candidate in this election like he did in 2020. He said that he made some mistakes. I thought that letter it had to have been fake. It wasn't. He really did write a letter on exactly how he was forced by the Democrat Party and by the establishment to control information, which he says he won't do anymore. But I don't think I think he's lost control of his company. But when you see stuff like that, do you have any pause in the fact that what you've been being forced to know and told over the last several years is all a lie?
Unacceptable. So I believe in freedom of the press. I believe in no outside government influence, and I think that is unacceptable. I don't know why. Well, I know the reason why, but just like the separation between church and state, I think there ought to be a separation between state and publication, no matter what platform.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Well
said. I everything that you've said makes me question how you're a Harris and
I don't get it either. At this point, I'm lost.
Everything that you've said outlines why you would not vote. And again, maybe not being a Trump supporter, I understand it. You said you're not a Trump fan. I think that's kind of where RFK lies, but he understands that there's a lot more potential with the Trump presidency again, because again, he had 4 years and he didn't do all these horrible things to democracy that they said that he will do. So I still have to ask the question, why Harris and Walz? Because you're outlining all the things that they would be dangerous for.
Could we highlight Kamala's record as DA? And because I don't believe that was very charitable in helping your neighbor when she was holding primarily Black men past their parole dates in order to utilize their labor for the state of California. To me, that's despicable.
And you've got Walz, the VP, who literally ordered the National Guard to fire paintball guns at people if they left their house during COVID. And he set up the only one at the time, a nationwide calling system to tell on neighbors that were breaking curfews during COVID. Like, this is not a party.
I got the videos, Jay. I could show them to you. You'll be like, what the hell is going on? This shouldn't happen in America.
No.
Send me the video, Cash.
I got you.
I'd be interested in seeing that because I only have the hot dogs, mom, and apple pie version of Tim Walz. And what I mean by that is the Democrat talking points, which are he served 24 years, and then he became a teacher and coach, and then he went into politics, and now he's the VP.
So here it is right here. It's real quick, 30 seconds.
By the way, before you play it real quick, Jay, do you think that he was a head coach? Not that it totally matters, but I think do you think he was a head coach or was he an assistant coach? What have you been led to believe?
Does it really matter whether he was the head coach or the assistant coach?
He was a defensive coordinator. That is not like Coach Walz. I'm sorry. That's like it's whatever. All right.
Stolen valor.
But I laugh because being sports people, that's exactly what I would bring up. But I know a lot of people would be like, eh. But this is what's going around right now, Jay, on social media from when Tim Walz was governor in Minnesota.
And you'll
You
hear
had the
police
National Guard
say, "Get in the house." You'll hear several
marching down the
commands, and then you'll
streets
hear "Light them
with
up," and then that's
with
when you
their
get the
Humvees
fire.
and forcing
We'll play it again.
everybody in their house.
You know, this is.
Get in your house now! Let's go! Light them up! Go inside now! Get in the house!
Get in.
Not that young woman with a paintball, man.
Now, with that said, it was in the Twin Cities, so you would say, well, maybe that was the mayor with Frey or Fry, whatever his name was, but it's the National Guard, which work at the directive of the governor, not
Correct.
of the mayor.
Yeah. I can pull it up again. I pulled it down, so we're just back to this screen. But this brings a lot of concern with Walz. The other concern I have with Walz, which I'm curious on what your thoughts are, is Walz grew government jobs by like 45% in the state of Minnesota over his time of being there. Instead of actually promoting private industry, he was growing government and employing them by the government, and that's how their economy kept going. And Kevin O'Leary did a whole big rant just last week on that whole thing, outlining the details. He pushed more people out of Minnesota for their jobs because there was no competitive job market. He actually helped them move to other states so they could get better paying jobs than working for the government.
And by the way, they had one of the highest states of misappropriation of COVID funds as well. I mean, every state screwed up quite a bit, but he had hundreds of millions.
Yeah, I have no room to talk in Utah.
His wife made a statement and said, while the city was burning down, Tim Walz's wife came out and said, "Oh, I just love the smell of freedom." Talking about the city being on fire, people losing their businesses. This is what we're talking about, brother. It's not. This isn't against, and I want to make this very clear. This is not against Democrats. Like, this is not. I don't have a problem with people that are Democrats. They are my brother. They're going through the same pain that I feel, except they just don't know why we're so frustrated and why we're vote. Why would Cash, a ex-gangbanger, you know what I'm saying? Why would I be saying I'm going to vote for Trump? What do I have to gain from that? And I've been a Democrat for forever. I was raised to believe I was a Democrat. People
So
need
I
to
want to
ask
ask
those questions.
as we wrap up. I want to ask, and maybe this is where we start to get into the why. So, what is your most important point when it comes to the next election cycle? What is your my main point is actually, to be honest, it's health, and that's why I love RFK helping. It's the health and the corruption in that part of the industry. Second, I would say is the economy and border, right there. So those are my big issues. Out of curiosity, to see maybe why else you would lean towards Walz and Harris, which I'm so surprised by, and I think you might actually be thinking about things. What's your number one point?
I think number one is freedom of choice. I think the Supreme Court has done America a huge disservice by eliminating Roe v. Wade. And I think that women have the right to control their own bodies. And therefore, Harris Walz is the team that can achieve that objective.
How would they achieve that? Sorry, go ahead, Casey.
So when you say freedom of choice, and Roe v. Wade is specifically about abortion, where is it in the Constitution that says that that is a requirement from the federal government to regulate?
Well, it's not a requirement in the Constitution.
Which would mean it's not a federal option to regulate.
What that means to me is that the government needs to stay out of and keep their hands off that whole decision
I don't disagree with you. I am libertarian. Remember, I hate the government. I don't want them in any decision that I make. However, it is not the federal government's decision on on abortion. It is the state's decision, and that is where you and I and everybody on this panel have more power and say in where that is done, how that is handled. Removing Roe v. Wade actually put it back into power of the states, so we actually have a say in what's going on, instead of saying, "Oh, almighty, powerful federal government, you make that decision for me."
And I'm a current student. I'm getting my master in political science. The function of the Supreme Court is not to create laws. The function of the Supreme Court is to interpret the Constitution. And Roe v. Wade was unconstitutional. So if you'd like to have the discussion on do we need to change the Constitution, then we could discuss the overturning of Roe versus Wade. But all the Supreme Court did was rectify something that was passed that was unconstitutional.
And if you don't know, RGB, one of the most powerful liberal judges in the last 100 years. I think as much as I disagree with some of her interpretation of the Constitution, I still think she was a very key figure in American history. Has on multiple occasions said that Roe versus Wade was bad law. So it's even from an old school constitutional liberal, there's understanding that it's wrong. And by the way, you're talking to a bunch of Trump voters that for the most part are pro-choice, not necessarily in our own life, but from a policy perspective. So the whole, and to be very clear again, I don't know what your level of knowledge is, but Trump has over and over and over and over again. And you just brought up Roe versus Wade, so I'm assuming you know this. And he did obviously help by putting the right Supreme Court justice to overturn what RBG deemed bad law. He is vehemently against a nationwide ban on abortion, no matter what they tell you about Project 2025 that has nothing to do with Donald Trump. He is vehemently against it. That was his whole purpose, was to bring it back to the states. And he has even talked about states like Ohio and Kansas that are right-leaning states, right-voting red states that have individually voted to make it legal in their state with, obvious levels. And I think that most decent people, including Democrats, realize that there should probably be a back end put, like where 15 weeks, 20 weeks, whereas people like Kamala and Waltz do believe in abortion up until the date of birth, which is, again, that's the extreme. Whereas Trump is actually in the middle of this issue. There are some hardcore right-wing Republicans that are pro-life only in their state, which I think it's a bad idea. I think it should be up to the voters. So I think there's some issues, but from a presidential perspective, I think you might be barking up the wrong tree on the Roe versus Wade issue when it comes to Trump.
I think I am suspect that Trump does not know about, does not have his hand in, and does not approve of Project 2025. The reason is that his VP authored the introduction.
Incorrect. Actually, that's incorrect.
But it's very, very incorrect. Go ahead, Emily.
J.D. Vance wrote the foreword for the director of the Heritage Foundation. He wrote the foreword for the upcoming book that will be released in September. It was not the foreword for Project 2025. Project 2025 came from the think tank, the Heritage Foundation. The director of the Heritage Foundation wrote a book, which J.D. Vance wrote the foreword to. Nothing to do.
And there's a great interview by the guy from the Heritage Foundation. And trust me, there's much of the project, not much. There's several interesting points of the Project 2025 that I think we all vehemently agree or disagree with, that I think also Trump has said that too. But the actual director talked about that this was a collection of work written by several different levels of conservative, put together in a 922-page document, which you may not know was actually written over 2.5 years ago, that just so happened to be brought forward right now, perfect in time for the election. The reason it was written with Trump's name in it is because he was the presumptive candidate the next time the election came around. When in all reality, just because there's people like Ben Carson that have writings in there. They didn't choose to write in the book in Project 2025. They took excerpts from their writing and put it in there as a conglomeration of a 922-page document, which is clearly targeted to try to derail the Trump presidency by making him look like some right-wing authoritarian, which is incorrect.
I just want to say before we get out, I don't know if we're trying to end right now, but I just want to say this one thing to you, Jay. I appreciate you for coming up here, my brother. And I appreciate your willingness to listen, because as I'm watching you, I see your wheels turning, and you pulling out everything that you could think of. You're pulling out everything that you could think of. And I hope that the answers that we've given you, the facts that we've actually given you, that you would go and just double check, see if we're lying. Get out of the media sources that you look at, get out of the places where you get your media from, and just go look at something that is fact. It doesn't got to come from either news source. Go and look up this stuff yourself. You can do it. You have a phone that is a supercomputer. You can go and look up all of this stuff right now by yourself. You can rewatch this and look at all the points that we made, and you go look it up for yourself without a biased news source. And then you come back and we'll talk again and have this conversation, and we'll see how you feel then. Because right now I see them wheels turning, bro. And everything that you said, you align more with us than you do your own party, which is insane.
I do agree with you that I live in an echo chamber of my own creation. The videos that you click on just reinforce more of the same. And so it takes proactivity to find something that is different than what you are clicking on and what you are fed on a daily basis.
100%.
They try to keep us divided, brother. That's why. They try to keep people divided by misinformation. And they know that you want to see a certain thing. That's how an algorithm works. So whatever you're watching, they're going to put that right in front of you. And if it's something that is left-leaning, they're going to give you everything left-leaning against Trump. And if you're right-leaning, they're going to give you everything that is bad against all Democrats. You gotta go towards the middle, my bro, and look at everything. Look at it all. I read leftist books. I look at leftist media, all of that, just so I can try to find the truth in between, because that's where it always is. The right is no better. Trust and believe that. The right-leaning media is the same thing. They spew the same garbage to keep the American people divided. We are not divided. You're my brother. I love you. I've never met you in person, but brother, I love you. And if you ever need me, I'm always right here. I don't give a dang if you say tomorrow it doesn't matter, I'm still voting Kamala, you're still my brother. And if you ever need me, I'm right here. But I would challenge you, man, because I feel like you care about this country. So really, really look into this, bro, to see how you're going to cast your vote. Don't make your mind up and say, I'm going to vote for Kamala because I hate Trump. Forget Trump. Take him out the equation and just look at policy and look at all the lies that get told about a candidate. And then ask yourself, why are they telling me these lies? If this isn't true, why are they telling me this? Why are they trying to sway me this way or sway me that way? Just figure out the truth, bro. Figure out the truth and then cast your vote. That's my advice to you.
I absolutely agree. I actually think that both parties are somewhat light on policy communication. So it's difficult to really go out and find where the two candidates stand. But I am definitely working on that.
So Jay, we talked before the show. Is Cash, since he's local, is he still invited to the debate dinner that you're having with your group of friends?
Oh, I'd love to have him.
I'm gonna see if I can get. I'm on federal probation, so I got to ask my PO. She ain't responded to me in 2 days.
Oh,
so I'm gonna hit
you
her
have
up in the
to
morning.
cross state lines.
Yep.
Sorry,
Yeah,
man.
I'm right on the border. I can see Chicago from the beach, but I can't necessarily just walk over there and go. So yeah, I gotta
your PO is gonna be like, wait, you're going to a house full of white suburban Democrats? Is this gonna be like the movie Get Out? What's about to happen here?
Russo is vaccinated. It's okay.
Oh, okay, that's right. He is vaccinated.
Whatever.
No, we all saw a house party.
How? Jay, I want to extend an invite, and Emily, I want you and in the exit to kind of quickly talk about what happened in France as part of your exita of what happened. But Jay, I would love for you to come back at any point and bring, and I don't want it to be 4-on-1. Please bring on as many of the people that maybe we can't get to. I can't go to Chicago. I could, depending on the date. But I mean, bring some of the people that are trying to have this conversation. I don't even want to call it a debate because we didn't really have a debate. We had a conversation where you provided information, I provided information. We went back and forth. We provided information. So if you have people, I would love for you to bring them back. And the door, we do it every Tuesday night. Typically it's at 6 o'clock, but if you have people that need an extra hour, we will accommodate that because the conversation is really what this channel was founded on from the very beginning. It just was very difficult to do.
Agreed.
I want to say real quick, man, shout out to Rights to Realities. Yo, I appreciate you. Just became I think you're the first or second member to join my YouTube channel. So thank you. I appreciate you.
Love it. Jay, invite is there. If you have any final words, please have at it.
Hey, I just want to thank you for the invite. It's been a interesting, stimulating, learning adventure for me. It's a lot of fun for me to talk to and learn from the other side, quote unquote. And you're absolutely right. We are not as far apart as social media makes us out to be. And I absolutely agree and love the fact that we can have a fun and challenging and stimulating discourse without diving into any of that nonsense that you see on the social media from a hate perspective. So I really appreciate the time, and it's great to meet you guys.
Very,
Thanks.
very nice to meet you too, man. Straight up, it's been a pleasure.
And shout out to Tony Watley for tagging you. I saw him tag somebody. I said, it'll never happen. And it happened. So thank you for coming on. I appreciate it so much. We'll have everybody do their exit. But Jay, literally, we're now friends on Facebook. The invite is always there, please. And we'll definitely talk more. And I think today was a great conversation personally.
Agreed.
I could not have had a more enjoyable time and just share. It's called actual thought and sharing of thought. So thank you for being here, Jay. I appreciate you.
I really like you, Jay. I really do, bro. I think you're an amazing person, brother.
Ash, you're awesome. I like you too.
Thanks, man.
Love it. All right, let's do our exits. Thanks to Jay. Casey, I'll start just real quick. I'm supposed to be doing a fantasy football right now, and I haven't got the login.
Auto draft. It's okay. That's what I did on Sunday.
I don't even know. I said I was gonna do Troy Aikman. I don't even know who plays anymore.
We're gonna do Troy Aikman.
I'm kidding. That's my point, that I don't follow Yay Sports anymore. What was I gonna say? Let's really quick talk about some of the sponsors, then we'll do the exits of the show. Where are we at? Cash, go ahead. You got Freedom Box?
Of course. So shout out to all the people that have I just got some new people signed up today, actually. So I want to say thank you to everybody who has joined my team in shopping and buying American and supporting American-made business. It's very important, especially underneath these conditions that we live under right now. I'm not going to get into it. You already know what I mean. But this way right here, you can support a patriotic company, all right, that is better for your health. It's better for the environment. It's better for you, period. It's better on your wallet. You can also earn an income by just shopping and sharing it with other people by telling them, hey, guess what? I got this right here from this over here. So if you're somebody who is interested in logging arms with me and helping to build this thing, keep building this brand. I got a goal of 400 Americans. I'm just over 100 and something. So if you can help me out with that, I would greatly appreciate it. Go to freedomboxinfo.com, fill out the dot form, and I'm going to reach out to you. We're going to have a little chat. Ladies, wear your makeup. I know how you are about getting on FaceTime, and that's all I know how to do is FaceTime. And yeah, we'll talk about it. I get you going. So freedomboxinfo.com.
You can make Emily look like she didn't get kicked by a horse.
Emily, you still look like a model. You're fine.
Thank you.
By the way, we had almost, this is one of our better shows. We've had almost 1,700 people watching as of right now, and even on Facebook we had 50, which is impressive. So that's Freedom Box. We of course have the water, which we're about a week away from seeing the actual product for the horse water as well. But we have the one for under the sink, 20% off. Oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong one. That's our gear. AwakeNetWokeStore.com. You could use Truth for 20% off. awakenowwokestore.com. We have a ton of things, and people have not bought a shirt in a while. So go and buy a shirt, buy a hat. It's been a painful amount of time. So go and check that out. This is the one I was talking about with the cleanest water filtration system on the market, and it is owned by a patriot. Shout out Nelson. CenturyH2O.com. Use Russo10 for 10% off. We've got the whole home. We've got the under the sink, which is where I drink all of my water. Cash, how do you like your water?
Water's so clear, you can't even see it.
Go to the page and you'll actually learn that it's more than just a basic filtration system, and you get that 10% off, and it's under $300 that way, and you don't need to replace the filters for like 18 months. Killer. That's pretty much all the major things we've talked about. I think we're good to go. All right. Casey, what do you got?
Yeah, just don't trust the government. If you did trust the government, you would be the reason why Pavel, however you say his last name, is in prison and will be there for 20 years.
I don't know if he'll get the full 20. We'll find out. We'll see if the international outcry.
If not, then he'll go to another country and they'll give him another 20 over there.
The UAE has already canceled their order of, I believe, fighter planes from France, demanding their citizens' release. In my opinion, this is one of the biggest attacks on free speech that we have seen so far in this battle. I could go on about that, but hopefully, I mean, keep your fingers crossed for Pavel. He's a good man. He's protected free speech. Actually, the reason why he did not relocate the Telegram headquarters to California like he planned is the FBI requested a backdoor to the private conversations held between users of the platform. Pavel said he would not do that. That's why the UAE let him set up the headquarters there. A Russian citizen who now is being held in a prison of a country that's supposed to have free speech, and Russia is trying to free him and protect free speech.
The irony is not dead.
You know what's crazy is I'm telling you, they trying to send a loud message to my man Elon. That's what that is. Them locking him up is like looking at Elon like, yeah, this is what we're gonna do to you. That's what that was.
Yep.
Yeah, from 15 billion to then the richest man in the world. Shout out always to Waz. Thank you for your help. I don't know what's going on here, but she has to this woman. I don't know what it is, but it involves a bucket and a mop, I feel like. So there's that. Also, did you see this one for you, Emily? Did she kick the horse back?
No, I caught the horse while my face was bleeding, fed him dinner, put him back in his stall, and he's living a great life. So all children are apparently ungrateful, even animals. I've learned from this lesson.
You're better than me because that horse would have been glue by the time I was done.
We do have our own channel, so if you want to follow Casey, his biggest following is American versus Government on X. This is my X handle, TWSF_USA, but I also have a YouTube, and that's Truth. We have a YouTube, Truth Will Set You Free USA. That's also on Facebook, all the above. So that's where you find that.
I want to say I wanted to choke you, Russo. You know how long I left that up there? What? I had to take it down, bro. You noticed that I don't have my handle up there. Yeah, I don't know how to take it back. He put big old swollen pants or whatever he put underneath my name, and I don't know how to change it back. So I'm over here like, oh, I can't.
Was that on there today?
Bro, no, I took it off like the day before yesterday, and I noticed it again. I'm like, I'm over here doing these lives. I'm trying to have good vibes, and right there is just talking about me having a big John underneath my freaking name.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're not.
Kathleen, we need to have a chat because reverse osmosis is not the way to go with water, but that's a different story. It takes away all the minerals and all the actual good things. All right. So with all of that said, I think that we are just about wrapped up. Is anybody going to notice it? Will anybody notice it? Anybody going to notice it? Nope. Okay.
Oh my God, bro. Come on, man. Russo. Change it back to my X handle, bro.
Okay,
Jesus, I don't know how to change it.
How do you not know how to? All right, I'll change it. What is your X handle?
At Cash Lee Kelly, the number 1.
Hey, Cash, do you know how to go to the DMV?
I'm not talking to you right now.
Yeah, you need to get your license. God, there was one other thing I was going to bring up. I love the conversation. I think it's important to have that. I would recommend people watch the Tucker Carlson and RFK. I'm about 15 minutes through that interview. You learn a lot of the issues going on in the backside of our government.
Oh, shout out to Theo Vaughn. In my opinion, one of the best Trump interviews I've seen. They really just tackled the issue of the drug addiction and alcohol addiction in the United States. Theo's a recovering drug addict, and Trump shared a lot of personal stories about his brother that suffered from alcoholism and ended up dying from it. It was a really empathetic, compassionate conversation between two Americans. Excellent if you want to see more of Trump as the man, aside from policies.
You know, Theo Vaughn, if first off, I think it's awkward for me to bring this up right after we talked about the drug addiction, but it was a fantastic show. If you ever want to have about 5 milligrams, which Cash you can't have because you're on probation, parole, whatever it's called, 5 milligrams of an edible, and then watch a bunch of Theo Vaughn clips, the next day you will wonder if you actually really watch those or not, because some of the shit that comes out of his mouth on interviews is so next level, out of this universe funny and it's so against the rules of political correctness. You will get so confused at all of it. So
hysterical guy.
If you partake in edibles, which I do at a very, very infrequently, but one time Kelly was playing the Vaughn interviews, and I lost my shit. I'm like, I woke up the next day. I go, Kelly, was that real? Did he really say those things? There's nothing funnier than Theo Vaughn naturally off the cuff. Period.
Everybody that's watching on X right now, I am trying to follow all of you back. It just stopped me. Now, normally it stops me for like 10 minutes, but it's just stopped me indefinitely. I've grown 500 more followers just within the last 3 hours. On my X account. So I apologize. Don't think that I'm not going to follow you back. I am very strict about following everybody back. I will follow you back as soon as it allows me to. All right.
Do we have any final words from anybody else?
I would just say I loved our conversation. It goes to my core belief. You attack ideas. You don't attack people.
Love it. I hope he comes back.
Yeah. You're not right, Russo.
Well, you can't have any more you can't call anybody back, so I figured I'd leave a little comment.
You're going to get me in trouble with my lady, bro. She going to see this and be like, why is he telling everybody what you packing? And
because you've told everybody what you're packing.
That was a long time ago. I don't do that no more. I don't even be making the joke no more.
That's right. People forget about the size of your penis. Got it. Okay. I love that we've gone off the rails. Guys, have a great rest of the evening. We'll see you next week. We're only a couple episodes away. Bobby Sauce is in for 200. Episode 200, he's there. I saw it. He said it, so we're good to go. Guys,
all right. Unite. Don't fight. Be a street light, because only you could be the change you wish to see in the world. And when you get too stressed out, you got to remember to pray, America, because without God, everything falls apart, and that is a fact. Woo! Yeah, brother!
Did you just shit your pants?
Yes.
It's a little bit.
You pooped.
Yeah.
You dropped a little Cosby kid off.
Who in the hell is Molly Collie?
I don't know. It's a cool name. I don't know, but that's pretty cool. I like her name. Not so much the text, but she's still okay. You're welcome here, Molly Collie.
I feel like she's spamming.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Yeah, you're in the wrong spot if you think people here are going to be voting for Mr. Walls.
Ms. Walls.
King and Queen. Harris Walls.
I feel like it's more King Harris and Queen Walls.
Oh, she called Kamala. My bad. I'm sorry. We got a liberal here. Kamala, a king, and Harris a queen. Or Walls a queen. Oh, yeah. I get it. The role reversal. I got you. That's what's happening. That's what's going on today. I don't know. That should be our next topic. Like, what the hell is really going on in America? Boys are girls. Girls are boys. I'm confused.
It's called inclusion.
Mommy, are you here? I'm so confused.
Oh, by the way, I'm about to share a video that is the ultimate DEI hire. You guys be on the lookout for that.
Oh, is she the vice president right now?
What's that?
Is she the vice president?
No, this is worse.
Cash, you know you're a DEI hire, right?
Nah, you're the DEI hire. Normally I don't get white guys a platform, but I did for you.
You should have said I can't be a hire because you don't get paid.
That's very true.